The first serve hadn't even cooled off the racket strings when it happened. A rival player leaned across the net, eyes narrowed, voice low but sharp enough for the courtside microphones to catch. "You don't scare anyone anymore." The crowd gasped. Not because of trash talk. Tennis has heard plenty of that. But because of who it was aimed at. At the baseline stood Serena Williams, calm, still, absorbing the words like wind against stone. The tension snapped tight across the stadium. Cameras zoomed in. Commentators fell silent. Because intimidation only works if the target flinches. And Serena didn't. The match had been billed as a clash of eras. A younger, aggressive rival, hungry, fearless, loud. Against Serena, legacy, dominance, experience carved into muscle memory. The rival had spent the week making headlines. "She's not the same," she'd said in interviews. "The game has moved on." Every quote replayed in highlight packages before the match. Every headline carried an edge. But Serena didn't respond publicly. She trained. The stadium lights burned bright as the match began. The rival came out swinging. Fast serves, hard returns, sharp angles. She celebrated every point loudly, pumping her fist towards Serena's side of the court. And early on, it worked. The crowd buzzed nervously. Serena lost the first game. Then another. The rival smirked. At 3-0, she stared across the net again, bouncing on her heels like she'd already won. The intimidation wasn't subtle. It was theatrical, calculated. But what cameras caught, and what the rival didn't notice, was Serena's breathing. Slow, measured. Her eyes didn't dart. Her shoulders didn't slump. Because intimidation feeds on reaction, and Serena was starving it. At 4-0, the rival served aggressively again. A blistering ace. She shouted toward her team. The crowd murmured, unsure whether they were witnessing a generational shift. Then something changed. Serena adjusted her stance slightly. A small shift in footwork. A recalibration. The next serve came just as fast. But this time, Serena read it. Return winner. Clean. Precise. Unapologetic. The stadium erupted. That single point shifted the energy. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. Serena held her next serve. 4-1. Then broke back. 4-2. The rival's smile tightened. Celebrations grew shorter. Eye contact became less frequent. Because now the intimidation had met resistance. By 4-4, the match felt completely different. The rival's movements were sharper, but more frantic. Serena's were fluid. Controlled. She wasn't overpowering. She was dissecting. Every serve placed strategically. Every return calculated. The crowd could feel it. This wasn't panic. This was patience. When Serena took the first set 6-4, the scoreboard glowed like a verdict. The rival sat in her chair, staring at her towel longer than necessary. The cameras caught her jaw clench. Because the scoreboard doesn't care about interviews. It doesn't respond to trash talk. It reflects performance. Only performance. The second set began with visible tension. The rival tried again. Louder celebrations, sharper stares, exaggerated fist pumps. But now the gestures felt forced. Because the intimidation tactic had already failed once. And the more it failed, the more desperate it looked. Serena broke early. 2-0. Then 3-0. The scoreboard was starting to tell a story. Commentators shifted their tone. "What we're seeing now," one said, "is experience under pressure." Another added, "You can't rattle someone who's been here before and conquered it." The rival's serve began to falter. Double faults crept in. Footwork hesitated. The intimidation energy had flipped. Now it was Serena's calm that unsettled her opponent. At 5-1, the stadium was fully behind Serena. Every rally stretched longer. Every point felt decisive. The rival's earlier smirk had vanished completely. Now there was only urgency and frustration. One final rally, 22 shots. Backhand to forehand. Angle to angle. Until Serena unleashed a cross-court winner that painted the line. Game. Set. Match. The scoreboard read. 6-4. 6-1. Cold. Clear. Final. The rival approached the net. Handshake brief and stiff. No eye contact this time. No whispered comments. Just acknowledgement of what the numbers already declared. As Serena packed her bag, reporters gathered courtside. One asked carefully, "Did the early comments motivate you?" Serena smiled faintly. "I don't play the player," she said calmly. "I play the scoreboard." That line spread almost as fast as the match highlights. Because it captured everything. Intimidation is noise. The scoreboard is truth. It doesn't care about interviews. It doesn't react to glares. It doesn't flinch when someone leans across the net and whispers doubt. It records. And that night, it recorded everything. As the crowd slowly began to settle after the final point, the giant screen replayed the match highlights. The rivals' early smirk. The bold stare. The exaggerated celebrations at 3-0. Then the shift. Serena's adjustment and footwork. The return winner that cracked the rhythm. The break that silenced the noise. And finally, the scoreboard glowing. 6-4, 6-1. Numbers don't exaggerate. They conclude. Back in the locker room, Serena sat quietly, unlacing her shoes. No dramatic speech. No celebration dance. Just composure. Because she had seen this before. Young challengers fueled by headlines. Opponents who thought intimidation was strategy. Moments designed to test composure. She didn't take it personally. She took it seriously. Outside, reporters crowded the mixed zone. The rival arrived first. Her tone had shifted. It was a tough match, she said carefully. She adjusted well. Adjusted well. A quiet admission wrapped in professionalism. Because deep down, she knew what had happened. She had tried to win the mental game before the first serve. And Serena had refused to play that version. When Serena stepped up to the microphones, the questions were direct. Did you hear what she said at the net? Did the early stare down affect you? Serena smiled, not dismissively, not arrogantly, but knowingly. I focus on execution, she replied. Everything else is distraction. Short answer. Heavy meaning. By the next morning, sports networks were replaying the match on loop. Split-screen segments showed the intimidation attempt beside the final stats. First serve percentage. Winners. Unforced errors. Breakpoints converted. Every statistic leaned in Serena's favor. The analyst's tone had changed completely. What looked like confidence early, one commentator said, turned into pressure. And Serena thrives under pressure. Social media told the same story. Clips of the rivals' early comments circulated, but this time, paired with the final score. Captions read, talked at 3-0. Lost 6-4, 6-1. Memes appeared within hours. But beyond the humor, there was admiration. Because what Serena had done wasn't just win. She absorbed. She calculated. She responded. The tournament director later admitted that ticket demand for Serena's next match spiked dramatically after the incident. People weren't just coming to see tennis. They were coming to witness composure in action. They were coming to see how someone handles provocation without losing precision. In her next match, the atmosphere felt different. Opponents didn't stare as long. Celebrations were shorter. Because the message had traveled through the locker rooms. You can challenge Serena. You can attack her serve. You can push her to long rallies. But intimidation? That won't work. Midway through the tournament, one analyst summarized it perfectly during a live broadcast. Some players try to win with volume. Serena wins with results. And that was it. The rivalry had started with noise. It ended with numbers. Cold. Clear. Final. But what those numbers represented went far beyond 6-4, 6-1. They represented control reclaimed. Pressure absorbed. Noise neutralized. Long after the stadium lights dimmed, analysts were still breaking down the turning point. What changed at 3-0? One host asked during a late-night sports segment. Slow-motion footage rolled. Serena adjusting her grip slightly. Her return position shifting half a step to the left. Her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in focus. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. She didn't try to overpower the intimidation. She outthought it. Inside the locker room earlier that night, her coach had only said 3 words after the first 3 games. Trust the reps. That was it. Because champions don't need speeches mid-battle. They need reminders of preparation. And Serena had more reps under pressure than most players have matches. The rival, meanwhile, watched the replay alone in her hotel room later that evening. She replayed her own celebrations at 3-0, paused them, then watched the rest of the set unravel. What felt like dominance in the moment now looked like premature confidence. She could see it clearly, the shift. The second Serena stopped reacting and started dictating. That's when the match truly began. The next day's headlines weren't cruel. They were sharp. Serena silences the noise. Experience over ego. Scoreboard speaks louder than words. No one mentioned the stare down as intimidation anymore. They called it a spark. And Serena had turned it into fuel. At practice 2 days later, young players on adjacent courts were imitating the match. One would celebrate loudly after winning a point. The other would stand still, mimicking Serena's calm expression. Coaches laughed, but then one said something important. Remember, you don't win with reactions. You win with execution. The lesson had already traveled beyond the tournament. When Serena stepped onto the court for her semifinal match, the energy was different. Not tense, respectful. Her opponent didn't avoid eye contact, but she didn't attempt theatrics either. Because word spreads quickly in professional sports. You can test Serena's endurance. You can challenge her backhand. You can attack her serve. But trying to intimidate her? That's wasted energy. Midway through that semifinal, Serena faced another early deficit. 2-0. The crowd held its breath again. But this time, there were no whispers of doubt. No murmurs about pressure. Because everyone in that stadium had already seen what happens next. She recalibrates. She rebuilds. She responds. And she did. By the time she lifted the trophy at the end of the tournament, the earlier incident felt like a footnote, but a meaningful one. Because it had reminded everyone of something important. Legacy isn't built on perfect starts. It's built on powerful finishes. During the trophy ceremony, a reporter asked one final question. Do you think players try to get inside your head? Serena smiled gently. They can try, she said. But the match is played on the court. Simple, direct, unshaken. Months later, the rival improved. Her game matured. Her interviews became more measured. In one press conference, she admitted, that match taught me more than any win ever did. Because sometimes the most powerful lessons come wrapped in loss. And years later, when highlights of Serena's career played in tribute segments, that match appeared. Not for the early intimidation, but for the comeback. For the shift. For the moment the scoreboard flipped. Because it ended with numbers. But it began with doubt. And Serena turned doubt into dominance. That's why the match still resonates. Not because someone tried to intimidate her, but because she showed, once again, that intimidation fades. Execution remains. And when the scoreboard tells the truth, it tells it clearly.